And I'll hand over to you, Jaime.
Hi, Grace. Hi, everyone. Grace, I'm going to ask you, can you allow me to share my screen before I start, so then at least that's away. So yeah, hi, everyone. I'm just going to take you through sort of the focus areas that we've utilized within Ocean Basket to understand how we restart our business and some of our franchisees' businesses. And obviously for us, the success of our restaurants are probably the most critical part, because without them, we don't exist. So I'm going to just go through a few nutshell elements of the income statement, including a bit of the landlord discussions and everything else, and just 2 or 3 pointers across each of the lines. And then I'm going to bring Ryan into the conversation, because I've had previous conversations with Ryan as we've gone along around how we restart these businesses and how critical cash flow is. So the focus of the screen I'm going to share, or the presentation I'm going to share with you, is really around, you know, the cash flow when we reopen, or if you have reopened under delivery and collection, what does it look like? Because there's a whole bunch of elements that are going to put further pressure on us outside of us being closed right now. That's just the reality of it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Just give me 1 second while I share. Just give me a thumbs up if you do see it. Okay, fantastic. So what I did is I took our income statement, and I mean, we're all in the sit-down industry here. So our income statement is really classified sort of 6 big buckets where we either have control of it or we don't. And at the moment, we have control of all 6, even the discussions with the landlords on what it looks like, where in the past there was sort of a set lease negotiation with long-winded negotiations that we went through to try and adjust when we're in there. But now it's a different conversation. It's more around survival. So I took our income statement and I said, sort of, what are the core areas that we're going to have to focus on when we reopen our businesses? And if we reopen our businesses, what is going to be critical in order to ensure that we see out the next 6 months? It's, you know, not only the past 2 months. That's one bucket of work that has to be managed and watched, and see how we manage that cash flow that's going out of our system, our debts, how we recover, and so forth. But if I reopen delivery, takeaway, or delivery, takeaway plus sit down, we're not exactly going to be at 100% from day one. And I think we'll agree on that. So I said there's sort of 6 critical areas for me in our business which we can control that has to get extreme focus. And it starts with, obviously, the food and beverage costs. So when I'm saying that, I'm talking about your food costs and your GPs. So there's a big portion in there that we have to look at, from over and above waste and theft and all those items. It's input costs, working capital, and all those areas. I'll go into the detail a little bit more now. Labor costs are critical because our restaurants are sit down. We have quite a heavy complement in our business at the moment, and it includes a back of house elements and a front of house element. In a takeaway restaurant, it's a little bit different. You have a sort of back of house team, and that's pretty much it. There is no real front of house element. Utilities, there is a big focus here, because at the moment, although utilities are quite a fixed fee and billing, there's some operational changes that you're going to have to instill in your restaurant that is going to have to adjust to drive down your utility costs naturally. The other one is marketing and advertising. That is one that we've sort of left, and I'll talk in general about. The interest expense in the banks. So at the moment now, we all know that there's been some sort of relief from the banks in most situations, and saying deferred payments, extended at the end of the term, we assist in overdraft facilities and so forth. But once the 3 months of levels start parting ways, we have to keep the conversations open, because our restaurants are geared at the turnovers that we closed at in February, not in March, but our turnovers that we were doing. And then the other one is occupancy cost. Obviously, rent and landlords is a critical thing in our business, probably one of our biggest costs, if not the biggest in most restaurants. So I'm just going to go into the detail of each element that I was referring to. So I'm going to start with the banks. The reason why I suggest all of you guys start in this area is you have to complete an income statement or profit and loss statement for your business going forward. Do it in increments of 6 months. It helps you in a lot of the conversations that you go through. From the conversation you'll have with a bank, any form of financial institution that provides loaning, as well as it helps you manage your business in all the other areas, from working capital to menu to your labor costs, right the way through. When you do these income statements, my suggestion is that you do run your income statements and be realistic. We're not selling business now, we're trying to keep them in survival mode. So if you know that you're in the business of sit down and I'm opening for deliveries and collections, and that's going to give me 25% to 30% of the turnover, that's what you plug in to that income statement on that first sort of June month, and you stagger it into December. It is critical that you understand your break even for every month. And the reason why I say it's critical now is because every month your break even number is going to move. Because once you go to 30% capacity, 50% capacity, 80% capacity, there'll be a whole different income statement. And if you understand the stagger of your restaurant, you can prepare for it as you're going along. See, with us in the past, we've normally utilized prior year number and saying, okay, I used to do X. If I grow by 5 or decline by 5, my operating costs are Y. Now we're moving in increments of 30%, 20%, 70%. So understanding where your break even is right through the process helps you go through it. And I'll show you what the income statement that I'll develop in the background that you can actually just plug in your figures and fiddle with it, that it matches your business. And that for me is the most important part. Once you understand these areas, I can promise you now, even if the banks, if you're an independent restaurant, not an independent restaurant, all of those areas, if you've been a good client with any of the financial institutions, they will listen to your business. They need you just as you need them, not in a fight, methodology, but in the fact that their business is based on funding and funding sound businesses. And if your restaurant has been sound, which most of you are still here today, they will then understand that you understand how your business goes, what your affordability is, and when you make commitments, it's not made on a commitment on a whim and saying, I think I can pay this, that's what I can pay. It's based on what the actual turnovers are. And when those are met or not met, then the restaurant can actually highlight why I couldn't meet the commitment or I could have met the commitment. So that's the first part. And the reason why I'm starting on that income statement and profit and loss statement is the forecast of your business going forward is really going to be the sort of Achilles heel. If you don't have that line of sight, you're going to incur costs on a monthly basis that is waste that you cannot afford. No restaurant can afford it now at all. The next step based on that income statement is working capital. So working capital, referring to all the stock that you use to create your end product. Stock, anything that you buy to ensure that you can produce that end meal, be it in a takeaway box or on a plate or in a plate, it doesn't matter. That working capital needs to be reviewed in totality. So you need to review your menu in totality. You need to understand what are your foster sellers, what are your core items, and what are items that are just holding up cash in your freezers. You guys know it, and I know it, and everybody knows it. If you're sitting in your restaurant and you walked in now, you could probably walk into your freezer room or your cold room or even your bar and your deli, and you could spot the items that you're saying, my ordering here and here and here needs to change. Cash in your business now is probably the most important thing, because you're going to need the cash flow to fund further items. So when you're looking at your menu, look at it as an item saying, so what is critical? What is my core menu? What do I need to keep? What do I cross-utilize across items? And then what can I really do without? So what is just holding up my stock? Sometimes this could be an expensive whiskey. Sometimes it could be a food item that actually just sits in the freezer for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And it's a sort of a luxurious item that you tend to keep. The other items is, when you're talking about working capital, when you reopen your restaurant, probably 95% sitting here owe our creditors still money. So I still owe either the wholesaler, the meat provider, the burger patty provider, Ocean Basket head office, what it is. Go understand what they're expecting when you reopen. Even if you haven't opened your doors now. The reason why I say that is when you plan to open your doors, if the creditor is expecting full payment, how are you going to run the restaurant if you haven't got the cash flow to pay them? So those conversations need to happen now, and happen in the format of saying, okay, I owe you 100,000 Rand in stock. I'm not going to be able to get it up to you now. How do you foresee our payment plans going forward? Because these creditors and suppliers of yours are part of your ecosystem. They're probably a critical area of your items. You can always swap out and do all of that stuff, but it doesn't give you a good reputation in the industry or the fellow suppliers. And they're going to be under the same cash constraints. So it helps them plan and understand how you're going to manage your business going forward. The last item is portion every item in the store. This goes from the sweets to the toothpicks to your stock in the back. Issuing needs to be done morning and night before a peaks period and secondary period. Again, here, the reason for this is people are under tremendous pressure. And I mean, it's the reality of life. A lot of our staff haven't received income. A lot of people are battling. You can't afford waste, losses, unnecessary theft, all of those items. So you have to portion against your trading patterns within the day. If you handle that, your working capital becomes a cash business almost. You know what's coming in, you know what's going out, and you're not further indebting yourself in a problem area. The next item based on the working capital. Once you've reviewed your working capital items and what sells and what doesn't, what's holding up your stock, you need to review your top 20 selling items on your menu for your GP and your food costs. So when we went into lockdown, pricing was X on pork, pricing was X on fish, pricing was X on steak. You need to review now and see if your suppliers are at the same price point, because your current menu that you currently got in your shop is based on a food cost or a GP amount that you predicted beforehand. Now, if you do reopen your restaurants and say you get your first order and meat prices have gone up 20%, for example, that entire meal becomes lost berry. And then you got to see, is that a meal that I can continue at that price point, or do I manage it, and how do I manage it going forward, and for what period? Because it's not about just starting the engine again. It's about making sure that the GP and the food cost that you're paying is affordable, that your restaurant can actually hold it. The other areas is calculate your estimated and total food cost for your entire menu. I mean, I'm sure 99% of you guys do it, but do it now again. Based on your new input costs, take out the funny items where you're saying, I'm not going to really sell it anymore. I have a reduced menu. You've seen most of the major big brands have reduced their menu. Follow suit. It's necessary. Because once you've done that, you can start seeing and say, okay, my overall menu is around 62% based on my sale mix, etc. Now I can understand how much money I have to plug into expenses. Because if I do 300,000 and my food cost is 35%, I've got 65% to play with to balance the books. And that allows you to move forward. If you're going to wait to open and determine how much money I have at the end, you're going to fall short. It will not. There's not enough meat on the bone. Already prior to COVID, we are already running a very marginal business. Once COVID hit us, now we need to run an extremely tight manufacturing facility now. It's almost everything needs to be counted for. We need to know by line item what it costs, how to produce, what does my packaging look like, all of those items. Review items that are loss leading specials. And I mean, this is just a suggestion. Understand that at the moment now, any meals that are loss bearing, it's very hard for your business. Unless you've got stock that you've paid for and so forth, that means you just go further in the red. So if a meal is a loss-bearing meal that you're not really making any money out of, once you've done your food cost analysis and you've done what it costs you to produce, what it costs you to put a griller in the back, you need to really look at those items and say, how critical are they to me now, and how do I convert them into something that I can actually make, even if it's a little bit of GP, because you cannot afford loss-bearing items in the store. So a 2-for-1 deal where you make zero out of in the hope that you sell a beer, it won't cover the cost of actually running the shop. The next thing is, and it's a suggestion, is standardize your menu as far as possible when it comes to delivery and take and sit down. So the luxury or the benefit of delivery, if you are doing it, or collection, or in the current trading format, is it allows you to get to a menu that is quite core to you, and it becomes easier to manage your shop. And if it's easier to manage your shop, the less risk there is in that business. The next thing that I want to have a chat to you about, sorry, I just want to move this, is your labor costs. You have to reduce your labor costs based on your forecast and turnover. So I'm going to go right back to the beginning in step 1. The profit and loss statement, or the income statement, whatever you want to call it, will help you determine what your percentage turnover is. And then if you build into that, I mean, it's a suggestion, it's just sort of industries where it is. Obviously, it's different by restaurant. I'm saying if it's between 18 and 20%, you can manage the ratios right through to the bottom. And in the income statement that I'll share probably tomorrow with everyone, once I've adjusted some of the fields that you can edit, it will actually allow you to see, okay, if I'm there, it's going to be 40,000 Rand worth of labor that I can afford. Can I actually run the restaurant with that type of labor cost, and see where it goes? Adjusting rosters to a single shift solution. Obviously, this is not effective for all restaurants, because some of you guys might start at 7 and close at 12 at night. But if you have the ability to do a singular shift, it allows your hours to be spread accordingly, and you to create quite a reduced complement in the store in managing the shop. So keep it to the single shift, 8-9 hour shift with that hourly break. The next thing is set your restaurants out. We're talking about reopening for sit down. That's the plan. We're planning to reopen. Set your restaurants out at 50% capacity, 65%, 80% capacity, and understand what your front of house is going to need to run it. And if the turnovers are aligned to the same thing. So if I'm expecting to do 50% of the turnover that I normally do in September or in July, and that is 500,000, and I'm only going to seat my restaurants at 50% capacity, what does that look like from a front of house? Do I need 3 waiters, 4 waiters, 10 waiters, or am I running 2 runners, 1 waiter? How's it going to look? Because that allows you to adjust your rosters to a different scheduling format and reduce that front of house complement quite dramatically. The operating hours, this refers back to the top. Our hours are quite funny, especially if you have a breakfast menu that runs right through to the night. It runs over 2 full shifts, or even if you do a lunch and dinner, we still run a 2-shift sort of methodology, which is based on hours. Understand what your minimum hours are required. So understand what your menu sales are, what are the consumer looking for in your area, what are you known for, and work with those solutions around those menu hours. Those menu hours will allow you to work. Cross-training of staff is critical. I don't think I have to tell you guys this, but it allows you to then allow sufficient shift hours to meet a minimum wage. So when I refer to something like this, imagine your scullery and you have a filleter. A filleter might be a scullery on the weekend, but on a Monday to Thursday, he's a filleter. So it allows you to cross-train them across multiple disciplines, so you don't have to bring another human in when the store is quiet. So if the store is quiet between 1 and 4, maybe that sculler turns into the filleter for prep in the evening. But you need to adjust the shift schedules based on where they're going. The next item that I want to refer to is the landlords. So this is a sort of a contentious topic for everyone. There's a different way to handle landlords, and there is no right way. There's no right answer, and everyone's different, and every landlord is very different. In my opinion, and sort of the methods that we've been using with Ocean Basket, we've been talking sort of 2 to 6 months on an average of a 3-month forecast and sharing our profit and loss statements. This is what I'm expecting. This is what we're doing. I can tell you now I can't afford that rental. This is what I'm suggesting, and this is what I'm committing to. If I don't meet those numbers, I'll share my turnover with you again and say, this is what I can commit. It has to keep the communication open with them. If the communication is open to them, understand that they're also running around with 50,000 tenants trying to make it work, and they're trying to do a blanket. The blanket won't work for every store, and the blanket won't work in this asset as it does in the next. If they've got line of sight of how your business is running, they will feel more confident in the fact that they'll remain committed to you. There will always be an agreed minimum base rent. When that minimum base rental is, you just got to work it back to your forecast. When I say you work it back to your forecast, if you're saying I want to pay 6% turnover clause, you are forecasting your business going forward. I know the forecasts are still guesses. And when I started the conversation, I said, bring it back to what you think is going to be the minimum turnover you're going to do during those periods, and then build that base rent off that minimum base. It gives them a little bit of confidence that you're not going to try and hide turnover from them, that you're actually going to display what you are going through. Utilities, rates, taxes, try and discuss using your rental guarantees to offset those outstanding amounts. So April, May, June. If you weren't operating, you would have had fridges on, you would have had items going through your store. Probably 90% of you have a rental guarantee, which is cash that is tied up with the landlord at the moment. It's your money, but it's tied up with them at the moment. Those utility costs are not going to go away. If that utility cost doesn't go away, it's going to be sort of the monkey on your shoulder when you reopen, and you're really going to be limping when you reopen. So try and tell the landlord, listen, I want to come to an agreement with you. That historical stuff, the utilities, it's my usage. Can you take it off my rental guarantee? Can you help move some of the cash out of there? And listen, 92% of the time they'll say yes if you've been a good tenant. And that allows you to focus on your cash flow now going forward, rather than focusing on your cash flow then and saying, shit, I've got another 2 payment plans that I have to go through. Avoid deferring rentals, not differing rentals, deferring rental payments. Rather keep communicating. So when you're deferring rental payments, try avoid doing that, because what it does is it will put you under further pressure in the latter points. When you get under pressure at the further end of the environment, you'll be sort of cash strapped then. So now your restaurant is running at 70%, but you're carrying 13,000 additional, yeah, 14,000 additional there, 15,000 additional there, there'll be no revenue because your margins won't be there. So when you're negotiating, take those items out. So when it comes to deferring rentals, you cannot defer rentals to be paid in September or now. If we are deferring rentals, then you're adding at the end of my lease at the current rates because the affordability is out. So understand where that is sitting. And then the last thing is share your income statement. You know, the one thing landlords don't know is they don't know our business and we don't know their business. Once we start sharing the data with them and saying, listen, I'm telling you now, I'm going to default if you're going to ask me for that, they will go back to the drawing board and they will come back. They will want to keep you because the tenancy is required to keep them or their little center going. So make sure that you share that income statement and you keep it as honest as possible. I mean, obviously there's costs and history and also there's loans, there's all of those items. And then they'll understand where is the cash flow going to come from. Because at the moment now, landlords see full restaurants prior to COVID, there should be a nest egg, etc. They don't realize that our businesses are very cash intensive. They require a hell of a lot of cash flow to keep going. The last one is utility costs. So this is quite a difficult one. So utility costs is you have to review all your equipment in your store from an operational level. So I'm sure 95% of you guys have done this already in your restaurants, but operational practices are normally done on a tick box. I mean, we walk into our shop, we turn on extraction, we turn on coffee machine, we turn on. And then the shop gets cleaned and then it goes and the doors open. So the reality of it is that can't work in that format. You're going to have to readjust your schedules and saying on a Monday, I'm only turning on one grill. I only need one fryer. If I walk in and the griller or the fryer has put on the two fryers, you need to discipline them not to do that and manage it against your schedules. Obviously, you don't want to compromise on food quality and all of those type of items, but you need to manage that out. Even when you close your shop, there's sort of tips that we've given some of our franchisees that you pick up, switch off the coffee machine. It's a massive draw thing, and it's something that everyone forgets, that the coffee machine should be switched off when you close off because it keeps reheating and switching off, reheating and switching off right throughout the night. It's a kettle that's automatically running all night. So those little things help you understand it. Manage gas usage. Obviously, in our restaurant, that's quite a big thing because we have salamanders and gas grillers. The same in your restaurants. I don't think it would be any different. Understand if you're running 2 grills, 3 grills, 1 grill, what is the capacity that I need to run today? And your staff need to be trained against that. Remember, they built in the habits that you trained on them when you open the shop, not on the habit you're training them now. And then track daily usage where possible. So if you do have a meter on your shop, understand where it's going and try and see if you are curbing that usage. So kilowatt counts, etc. So I know not all shops have their meters visible in their stores, but if you do, track it. See if it's moving down, if it's going up, if the adjustments are showing areas of concern. Shut down everything, see if there's alternates. I mean, there's 1,000 tenants in a mall. It doesn't take much for an incorrect connection or something to happen and an aircon is being billed to you or something like that. So understand whether your usage is accurate because you're tracking it every day and based on what your usage is. Already now when you're closed, obviously everything's billed a month in arrears. But you should have started to see, okay, if I have my shop off, I'm spending 4,000 Rand a month on electricity for the cold room and freezer rooms. That's what it is. And in those environments, those operational disciplines, like if you issue stock once, and the cold room and freezer room is not open, close, open, close, open, close. The compressors work a lot less and it remains at temperature for a lot longer. It allows you to spend more wisely within the store. So those for me are really critical areas that you can work on now and can make this cost quite variable as you're going forward. As I mentioned, what I am working on in the background is I will build an income statement sheet that looks like this. It will allow you to plug in your prior year 2019, 2020 figures, which runs up until February. And then I'll build in a percentage ratio that you can adjust based on your mall, your store, how you feel it is. If you're predominantly liquor volume based, if liquor doesn't come back in, what does it mean for me? And then you can build in your own food cost and then work your expenses down on the left-hand side. I'll do sort of where I see industry averages. But if your labor costs are slightly higher or lower, you can adjust it down and then it can just forecast for you what your next 12 months are going to look like. If that will assist, I'll do it. I mean, obviously from that side, it allows you then to forecast and have something to work towards. So your budget is not only how much turnover I'm doing, how much I'm budgeting in labor. And if I meet those turnovers, I know I'm spending 25,000 in labor, and that's all I've got. It allows your managers and you to now roster and shift schedule. It's going to be really tough. A lot of you guys are going to have to work shifts to try and offset some managers' leave time and so forth, but it allows you to build the business to be a little bit more sustainable. And that's me in a nutshell. So where I do want to go now is I want to bring the conversation a little bit further into Ryan's world, which lives in the financing and the lending space. And the reason why I brought Ryan onto the conversation is he's been one of the most proactive people in trying to understand what COVID means to the restaurants currently and what's happening. So Ryan, I'm going to ask you just to unmute yourself there if you don't mind. And I'm just going to sort of ask you a couple of questions so you can give some insight to the people on the screen. I mean, you've heard where my stance is around the cash flow and cash constraints within our restaurants. We haven't been trading for 3 months. So can you just give me some background around Merchant, what exists, where did it come from? I know you're a co-founder in it, and where you saw the gaps are and how many businesses you're supporting. Is it SMMEs? Is it medium size? What is it? And then it gives everyone on the screen a bit of context.
All right, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Jamie, Grace, thanks so much for having me on. I think this Restaurant Collective is a fantastic initiative, and us as Merchant Capital would like to assist in any which way we can. So maybe going back to the beginning, we started our business at the beginning of 2013, and really it's been 7 years of slow, gradual build. We've now funded just over 5,000 businesses and put out approximately £1 million in working capital across the retail continuum. But restaurants always been close to our heart, and probably makes up just over 30% of all the businesses that we put cash into. So we understand the restaurant space really well. Maybe just an overview on the way we work here. So we're a working capital provider. We provide businesses with up to 100% of their monthly card turnover to use as they see fit. But we're fully aware of the time sensitivities that you guys have running your restaurant. So everything that we do is around convenience. We have a process which is very quick and simple. When we receive an application, it takes us 48 hours to process, approve, and fund. Pre-COVID, we would provide a business with up to 100% of their average monthly card turnover. And the beauty about our product is really all in how the funds are repaid. So we've got a smart piece of technology that fits into the card machine. And what it allows us to do is to hold back an agreed piece of each transaction that goes through the business. So you guys, everybody knows that you've got times of the year or the month when you guys are pumping, and you've got times, other times where things are really quiet. So the way our product works is that repayment fluctuates in line with business turnover, so that when business is good and cash flow is stronger, you guys are able to pay back more quicker. But conversely, when business invariably goes through a cyclically quieter time, you aren't saddled with fixed lump sum amounts, and you pay back small incremental bits in line with how your business works. I think one of the big metrics that we're proud of is that for every 100 businesses we fund, 80 businesses come back and they take another facility. We're very mindful of the underlying affordability that a business has. So what we'll never do is provide funds to the extent that it actually puts the business under unnecessary pressure.
Thanks, Ryan. Listen, how many restaurants do you currently support?
So let's do the math. So 5,000 businesses, about 800 active restaurants currently on our book.
But then, Ryan, the other item was, there was a question that was raised yesterday around how do the restaurants apply for the SMME relief funds, this 200 billion that came out, the government saying they allocated. And what we're seeing with our groups of franchisees, whoever's applied, it's either declined or it just doesn't get anywhere? Have you got insights in it at all?
Yeah, so I think so to start, I think the initiative is it's theoretically a very it's a very good initiative. But like a lot of these things, the magic happens in the execution, and I think in certain respects there are flaws in this execution. Maybe just to give the listeners a little bit of context. So there was 200 billion rand that's been made available by way of this loan guarantee scheme. It was launched in the first 2 weeks of May. And really the idea over here is that the National Treasury, supported by the banks, were given this facility to fund businesses that were doing up to 300 million rand a year in turnover. All these loans were guaranteed by or are guaranteed by Treasury, and really the way it works is as follows, is that effectively 66-month term loans, of which the first 6 months there is a payment holiday. And the uses or the recommended use for the product is for operational expenditure. The problem is in the execution, and I think while I think are certain businesses or a lot of businesses that are benefiting from this, of this 200 billion, from what I heard up until Monday, I think only about 10 billion rand has been deployed. So this is really a time where it's a race against time. Guys are fighting for their survival, and the requirement for this cash is needed quickly and efficiently.
Thanks, Ben Ryan.
Is the timing?
Ryan, can I ask you something? When we initially had our conversation about probably right in the beginning of lockdown, or not in the beginning, about 2 weeks in, you mentioned that you guys were relooking funding as a totality and obviously lending and borrowing and stuff. I mean, obviously for all of us, it is under pressure from a point of how do we fund it and how do I pay it back and so forth. So how have you guys looked at the COVID product?
So I think maybe what I should do is I should tell you that when COVID started, I think the economy was split into two business types. One were essential businesses, those guys who were able to trade from lockdown level 5. And then the second was non-essential businesses. Now our portfolio is made up of just under 85% non-essential businesses. So really what we needed to do was we needed to go back to basics and understand how we could be. So first and foremost, we made a big strategic call, which was pass a payment holiday onto all our non-essential businesses for the time period that they didn't trade. What we then needed to do was get an understanding from people that were in the trenches. So whether it was the restaurateur themselves, a supplier to the restaurateur, or critical stakeholders like yourselves, to understand what the pain points were. So we went and we did surveys, and then we did deep interviews, of which I interviewed you as one of the people, just to garner real insights from the coalface, in that what is it that you guys see as your biggest business risks, and from there we would take it away and go and develop new value propositions that would be able to assist different industries, restaurant being one of the main focus.
All right, Ryan, so obviously with all these short-term products, I mean, we've all been through it or we know about it. Everyone has some sort of animosity towards it. So, you know, for us, there's a whole bunch of restaurant people here. You're in the financing game, you know, borrowing and lending. You know, how do you recommend these franchisees or these restaurateurs, sorry, I'm so used to saying franchisees, these restaurateurs go back and determine what is the best way they should borrow money? Should they go to the bank? Should they go to Ryan? How do they determine it? Because it's a conversation we've always had in the past. As I said, we don't ever borrow if it's not viable. That doesn't make sense. There's no one winning in that scenario.
So I think it's an interesting question, and it's always a fascinating debate. For me, the thing is, this isn't a one size fits all. I think what's very, very important is to first and foremost understand what the financing requirements of the restaurateur are. So let's perhaps speak to a small tavern. A small tavern is a guy that would have high frequency weekend trade. So a guy like that would need a short-term stock purchasing type finance option, which he could pay back and revolve or access or access again. Then you look at a sit-down restaurant like I imagine majority of the people on this call are, and let's as an example, you need to buy an array of new kitchen equipment. There, what you need to do is you need to go and you need to speak to the asset financing guys. Then you get traditional working capital stuff. So this is, as an example, under the current circumstances, it would be what do you do to increase hygiene? Marketing to make sure that people know that you are trading. Maybe an enhancement of your delivery value proposition. You want to buy some bikes. Or you've been eyeing a chef from a neighboring restaurant who is wobbling and you now want to take advantage of the situation. These are all opportunities to trade working capital, and a merchant cash advance is a great option in that regard. So long answer to a short question. I think what you've got to do, Jay, is you've got to match the term of the loan to the use case and make sure that they align. You don't want a long-term product funding a short-term requirement and vice versa.
Thanks, Ben Ryan. There are some questions on the slide here. So I just want to, before I get to the questions, I just want to ask you, so initially you guys presented something around the Reboot product. Obviously we only discussed it briefly. Can you just give us some insights? What is the Reboot product? What is it for? Sort of what is your focus on there? Because you're talking about short-term cash to try and revolve it, and it's not about long-term loans and payback. It's about getting stock into the system and that. Can you just give us some insight there?
Sure. So our thinking on this Reboot, there are a lot of businesses who have who didn't trade for a full 6-week period, and over that time there were still fixed costs that they were responsible for. There was salaries, there was rent, there was perishables that were going off. There were other debit orders that they needed to pay. So as a result of that, any excess cash flow was probably eaten into. So our thinking was we needed to come up with a value proposition which greased the wheels in order to ensure that the business had sufficient cash flow to help it trading again. But there was a lot of obviously there's a lot of reticence because there's a lot of uncertainty. So really the way we looked at it is as follows. In lockdown 4, we had certain rules, but I'm going to speak to lockdown 3 because that's where we are now. So what we would do is we would provide a customer, or we can provide a customer with up to 80% of their pre-COVID plus current turnover averaged out. Okay, so let's assume that we approve a guy for 300,000 Rand. He gets the cash and he can start using it in the applicable ways in his business now. But what we know is that guys are, there's reticence on the repayments because of the uncertainty. So what we've introduced is a step-up repayment mechanism where let's assume that at full capacity, we're holding back 10% per transaction. In month 1, during Reboot, we will hold back 2.5% or 25%. In month 2, we will hold back 5% or 50%. In month 3, we will hold back 7.5% or 75%. And then in month 4, where there's a semblance of a new normality and businesses know what the future has in store, in inverted commas, then we'll return to, let's call it normal holdback percentages because cash flow will be stronger.
All right. Thanks, Ben Ryan. There has been 1 or 2 questions that I see have come up from Lucky, where he mentions, are you continuing to provide funding even under lockdown? So I'm assuming, can you give some, I heard you mentioned something about COVID funding during lockdown, what it looks like, and level 1, 3, 2, and 1. Can you give some insight there?
Sure. So at the moment, so currently, if a business is trading, we are providing working capital into the vertical. If there is a business that's opted not to open and trade yet, we will assess them, and on a case-by-case basis, we will look at providing them working capital. I think at the moment, everybody's aware that there's extra risk in the market, and as a result of that, our credit criteria are a little bit more stringent, but we need to stick to our values, which is serving ambitious growth of the entrepreneur in South Africa, in good times and bad. So, Lucky, to answer your question, if you're interested, make an application or give me a call. Let's have a discussion. And I will certainly assist you in any which way that I can.
Thanks, man, Ryan. There's another question from Dino. I don't know if you've got your chat box. It's probably easier that you read it, but I'll read it out to you quickly. He's talking about these type of loans are linked to unsecured capital and is set to 20-30% of the requested loan amount. Is this correct or the same? Has it changed, and so forth?
I just want to clarify the question, James. Is he asking about loan to turnover ratio, or is he asking about price?
I think
Dino,
it's more,
just say it quickly.
I think Dino, unmute yourself and ask the question.
So basically, whatever, so now you're requesting 100,000 Rand as your loan amount. You add on an extra 20-30% to that and then build it into the repayment schedule, which is then paid over whatever the term is. Is that still the same, or is that the case, or have you guys changed your model?
So, good question, Dino. Thanks. So maybe the elephant in the room. This product has always been premiumly priced. Okay. However, it's the convenience and simplicity around it which justifies that premium. What we've done is we've got material funding funds that have come into our business, and what it's resulted is that we've brought down our rates. So the rates that you are speaking to, Dino, they've definitely improved over time. And what we see is that on a first facility, there may be a particular rate, but based on the performance of the facility and the know-how and the relationship that we forge with the restaurateur on loan 2, 3, 4, etc., we will always improve. I just want to make one more point. We three entrepreneurs that started this business, so we understand the painstaking work that goes into running and building a business. We will collaborate with you guys and work in any which way possible in order to put facilities in place that work within our credit criteria, but also within a context of your business. So what I'm asking is, if you have reservations, questions, or concerns around the product, just phone me, or I can put you onto one of the members in my team, and we'll walk you through the process. If it works and you like what you hear, we'd love to do business with you. If it doesn't, what I will always do, my staff will place you or steer you in a direction which allows you to engage with a financier that may suit your requirements at the current minute better.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks, Ben Ryan. The last one was the lockdown one. I think that's it, Ryan. So if there are any other questions, we'll note them. And then, Ryan, I do think there is something that you can share around the product. So there is possibly something that we can share with the Restaurant Collective. Obviously, the people on the screen obviously have to make the decisions on their own, and whether or not it's fit for purpose. I mean, I think I've had multiple conversations with you around whether or not affordability works for a shop and so forth. I hope those same conversations follow through on the other areas and other people that are on the screen. Really, we are in the survival, trying to keep our sit-down restaurant groups open and the whole lifestyle of sit-down alive, and that's part of the conversation. And that's it from me. So Grace, I'm going to hand over to you, then you can close up.
Cool.
Listen, Ryan, you are really great to listen to for someone who has a very remedial understanding of all of this stuff. So thank you so much. I was dying to ask you a question. What made you start this business? Because you're the co-founder, so it's very different to, like a big mega bank, and there's a place for all financial solutions. But what were you doing before, and why did you start it? I'm just so curious.
That's a good question, because my background isn't actually finance at all. I've got entrepreneurship in my blood. So out of university, I started a media business, which we sold to Prime Media. And at the time, my best friend, who's the CEO of the business, had been in private equity and finance for many years, and he came across this model in the States. When he phoned to discuss it with me, I I mean, he won me over straight away. I think I've always had a soft spot for the SME and the underdog, I think this product resonated with me on a visceral level, and as a result of that, I've thoroughly enjoyed making the business grow, but by helping lots of people along the way.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I know Jaime's got all your details, and Jaime, we'll put everything up on the resource page. And then I see that you guys, 90% said you'd love to have a detailed income statement, almost like coaching workshop. So we'll be sure to set that up. And yeah, and then, give Ryan or his team a ring. And then if we want him to come back and share something else, he can. And then when our restaurants open, you'll come and eat at all of us.
Guys, I can't tell you how much me, my wife, my parents are missing coming and eating at your shop.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I think today was such a fantastic session, and thanks, Jaime. I think you definitely educated all of us, even those of us who live with it every day. So I hope to see you all on Monday. So Jaime spoke a lot about the labor stuff. So on Monday, we're going to show you with some examples how you implement that. So yes, it's very nice to say reduce your staff and do this and cross-utilize people, but how are you going to do that? What job descriptions do you need? If you need to put people on half-time, how do you do it? What are the legal implications? And how can we help you without you having to spend more money than you need to on all sorts of other consultants? Okay, so go cook. Good night. Thanks. Arrivederci. Ciao.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Grace. Bye, Jamie. Thanks. It seems as if I've been recording it. I think it needed to be recorded.